There we go. That's right. That's what I'm fucking talking about. I'm really, really excited for this week. Our topic is really cool. I made this pretty much entire thing today, but it turned out like awesome. It's actually one of my favorite things we've talked about in a long time. And it's giving nuance. Tonight's going to be giving a lot of nuance. Let me take my hair down. Sorry I was a little bit late, but you guys are late too. What's going on? Hi, Barbie. Lizard Beth, hi, I met you. Some of you came to the shows. I was with the Unteachables like last week. I got home Sunday? Yeah, Sunday. And I met some of you. It was cool. Hello, Mr. Doctor and classmates. Hi, Lemur Banana. I'm glad you're back. I'm very happy to see you again. Let me go to the multi-stream chat so I don't just see Twitch. I think we should probably just jump straight into it because we have a lot to talk about. This is 100 slides. So locked in today with my Deep Eddy Vodka Slurpee. I wish I could have a Deep Eddy Vodka Slurpee. Alcohol has really, really been messing up my stomach recently in a way that's like not fun. And I'm not into it. You got to start posting the stand-ups on YouTube so we can see. Canadian, I cannot come. I fear that will probably never happen because the reason I do stand-up is because I like to be able to make jokes that aren't going to live forever. You know? And then also, like, when you post something on the internet, you don't know who's going to see that. When you say something at a stand-up show, everyone's there to laugh. So it's more of like a ha-ha audience. So, like, I don't really have to worry about, like, because a lot, like, I'll be honest with you guys, like, I do lie in there. Like, I tell stories and I lie to make them funnier. Like, that's what stand-up is. So I don't want to put me lying on the internet. You know what I'm saying? My first time making it to class live. Hi, class. Hi, Louise. Are you going to do a world tour now? I have no money. What I fear is that, like, to book stand-up, you need to prove that you have ticket sales. So Stephen and Lou have been doing stand-up for years. So I didn't book anything. They booked shows and were like, hey, we're bringing this little woman to come yap. And the club owners were like, it's your show, dude. It's your responsibility to sell tickets. Like, if you want to bring her, bring her. So it's not like anyone that has the ability to book me cares, if that makes sense. But the club owners were very, very receptive to me. Like, they gave me really good feedback, and a bunch of them were like, this is only your first time doing this. Like, you did a really good job. Only one guy gave me negative feedback, and he was an asshole, but honestly, his feedback was so good, and I was asking everyone else to give me negative feedback. I was like, tell me what I'm doing wrong. And that guy was the only one that did, but he was kind of an asshole. But I don't think it was, like, personal. I think that's just kind of his personality type. Working on a spreadsheet that has over 1,000 rows, send help. That's Mr. Redacted's job, is spreadsheet. And a lot of his have like thousands of rows. Oh, the feedback he basically said is he was like, you have really good stage presence and you're a storyteller. But he said that basically some of my punchlines were really good. And some of them, he was like, people are only laughing because you're cursing and you have a funny demeanor. So he was like, your punchlines that are really good, you need to focus on that and do more of them, is basically what he was saying. And I was like, that's a good point. Because sometimes I'll say something that's not funny, but because it has a curse word in it, people laugh. You know? And that's kind of what he was saying. And I was like, that is true. And he was like, but I can tell from some of your punchlines that are really good, you are smart enough to be a good storyteller. But yeah, it was good. It was really good. I liked it. I just hate being away from my house. I don't know why my stomach just started to hurt so bad. That's not good. The Mr. Redacted reveal. What's funny is, like, I'd already posted that picture on Instagram, I think, and everyone was like, oh my God, you're married. And we're not married yet. I just thought of that meme, and I was like, I need to post this meme. This is a really good meme. Like, I did it for the meme, not for anything else. I'd buy tickets in Boston. I'll let them know. So what I'm going to work on... stand-up is a lot of trial and error, yes. What I'm going to work on next, for those of you that are asking for, like, more dates and things like that. So basically, Stephen and Lou do a really good job of keeping track of their statistics and things like that. And they took videos of everything. So I'm going to make what's called, I think it's called like a press kit or something like that, that basically I can send to club owners that's just like me. So they can see, like, oh, here's other shows I've been in. The tickets sold well. Here's some clips of me. You can hear people laughing. So that what probably is going to happen, I'll be honest with you guys, if you think that it's going to be like Miss Redacted coming to your city, an hour-long special, that's not going to happen. Like, I'm very, very, very far away from that. But what probably will happen is I'll probably be able to get some clubs that have like every Thursday we do this comedy, I'll be able to get like a spot in something. So I'll be able to send you guys like, hey, this random comedy club is hosting this night. I have a 15-minute spot. That's probably what's going to be coming your way next, is not so much like the misredacted 1 hour special, because like I don't have the experience for that. I don't have the clout for that in the comedy world. I literally just don't, which is fine because like I'm very new to this. I have literally one 10-minute set. But you will probably have the opportunities to see me in shorter, like where I'm one of many, sooner, and then hopefully one day. And I was talking to Stephen and Lou, and I was like, what's you guys' end game? This is my favorite question to ask people, is like, what's your end game? Like, what to you would you be like, I made it, I don't need to go further than this, like this is what I wanted, like this is it for me? That's my favorite question to ask people in any field. Like, what to you would be like, I made it, like I don't need to be hustling anymore, like I did it, I made it. And they were both saying like being like full-time comedians touring, doing that. And on this trip I really realized, like, to me that's not the I made it moment. Is that something I would love to do? Yes, absolutely. But to me, my ultimate dream would be to have like more of like a late night show where like comedy was part of it. Just because I hate leaving my house so goddamn much. And because like I love comedy, but I love too many other things too. Like I love doing history stuff. I love talking to people about things. So I would love to have like, what's it called? Like a late night show, a variety show? I don't know, where like part of it was me just talking and being funny. Part of it is we learn something. Part of it is I interview people or I go somewhere or I do something. And like that format to me is like, that's my end game. So that's like, I love doing comedy because I think I love being in person with people. Like I love having like an in-person audience is so fun to me. And I think it's building like a lot of skills, but I don't know if it's something that would be like my end game, but it's definitely something I want to keep doing. Will you be going by Miss Redacted still? I'm nervous a dumb club guy will use your government name to introduce you. So actually the first time I did stand up, I did it under my government name because like and that's one thing that I'm struggling with because like what I told the club owners that I think is true is I was like, call me Miss Redacted because if you use my government name, no one's going to know who the fuck you're talking about. I was like, they came here for Miss Redacted. So the club owners were like, oh, okay. But when I was just like a couple weeks ago, before we went on tour, just so I could try it first, I went to just like an open mic that I got connected with somebody with. I did not know a single person there. I did not promote it at all because I was so fucking nervous. But I just went by like my actual name because I just felt weird to like an audience of people that don't know me being like, oh, I'm Miss Redacted. But then on this touring trip, I was like, no, I am Miss Redacted. Like, I think that's it. Like, I think I just am going to have to get over the weirdness of people not knowing who I am. And then, like, that's who I am there. Just because I think, like, when you think about a career, if I go do stand-up under my government name, you're a random audience member, and you Google me, you're not going to find anything at all. Because there's nothing to find. But if you Google Miss Redacted, you will find tons more of me. So I think I'm going to keep doing it under Miss Redacted just for like brand consistency, I guess. But it's been something I'm really having fun with and I'm excited to try more of. And it's very like the real life Hannah Montana. So one of my coworkers calls me Clark Kent because I wear glasses to work and I don't wear glasses on here. Sometimes I do. If y'all come every week, you've seen me. Sorry, I keep burping. I just ate. I always say that, though. He calls me the real life Clark Kent because he's like, your glasses are on at work, and then you take your glasses off, and you're on the internet. You should make a joke about it. Like, I'm legally not allowed to tell you my government name. Yeah. You get the best of both worlds. Okay, so we've been here for 10 minutes just yapping about my life and the updates and all those things. I will post more tour dates. I'm going to be posting them on Instagram mostly because TikTok basically hates. Like if you say a date or a time or a place, it hates you. I think you've turned your internet anonymity into a personality. Miss Redacted seems really authentic as a real life stage performer. That's what I think as well. Like it kind of started as a joke for when I did skits and told stories, but now like I love it. Like you guys see my logo with it. Like I think it's just so fun. And let me tell you, I know I said I was going to get started, but then I got distracted. Let me tell you, this is what made me turn. This is what made me be like, no, I need to lean into the misredacted. When we were in the Little Rock show, most of the people that came to these shows did not know who I am. I would say like 10 to 15, max was like 35 people who came for me. So when we did the show in Little Rock, we were selling merch afterwards. Well, the guys were selling merch. I was just kind of standing there. And this woman was like, I love how your name is misredacted. And I was like, oh yeah, it was just kind of like a fun thing to like keep my privacy. And now it's like my name. And she was like, she told me what her job was. I don't remember. It was like something in special ed for the district. And she was like, every time I get a paper, it says redacted, 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 redacted. And so she said, when you stood up there and said, what's up, y'all? I'm misredacted. I felt like that was perfect for education. And it was so funny. And seeing that someone who didn't know me got it and like loved it, I was like, okay, I need to stick with this. Like, I think this is it. I literally can't picture you having a name. Me either. And now it's to the point when someone calls me by my name, I like don't respond. It's bad. I'm like, if someone calls me by my last name, because that's what I use at work, I do respond. But if someone calls me my first name, I'm like, because no one really calls me that. Okay. Y'all coming up with the names that you think would be my vibe is funny. So now that, again, got distracted again, but now that it's been almost 12 minutes of me yapping about my life and things like that, let's talk about Frances Perkins. This is like a lot. Like, this is crazy, and I feel like I'm so angry that I didn't know who this woman was before. The way that I learned about her and got this idea is I was listening to a podcast about the Great Depression. It's called like American Storytellers, I think. It's like a big production one on like the Wondery app and shit, but I listened to it on Spotify. So they mentioned Frances Perkins. They were like, oh yeah, the first female member of a president's cabinet. And I was like, huh? And I had never heard of her. And then I just wrote her name down on the stream list that like, this is who she is. And then when I made these slides today, I was like, holy shit. This lady did so much work, and there's so much in this country that we can like attribute back to Frances Perkins, and I literally never even heard of her as like a history teacher who loves the Great Depression. So very, very much like unsung worker of America's history. Very interesting story. There's going to be a lot of nuance tonight. This, like, it's not all sunshine and roses. It's the Great Depression. Like, I don't know if you thought it was going to be. But let's go ahead and get into it. Also, I love when people start Vanderpump Rules. I'm so glad you guys are watching this. Did you use AI for today's slides? No, I told you guys I'm done with that. The only exception, and I guess I just need to turn it off, is sometimes when I Google, like, what's someone's birthday, and it's like, AI overview. I hate how it does that. Remember when it used to just come up with their fucking birthday? No, I'm done using AI for slides. I'm not going to tell you I'm done using AI for everything ever, but definitely done with using it for the stream, because I feel like this is, and someone left me a comment the other day that was like, what was your turning point in AI? Like, I used to watch your content and then you said you used AI, so I stopped, which kind of made me laugh. And for me, it was like, I got tired of seeing AI on the internet. You know what I mean? Because when I started using AI, I would never really see other people using AI. I'm sure they were using it, but I just didn't see it that often. And now I feel like I scroll on my phone and it's fucking AI videos and AI art and AI, like, fucking list and AI post on LinkedIn, and it's just boring. And I feel like the internet is just turning to slop. And I was like, people pay to subscribe to this stream, and I don't want to give them slop. I want to give them good things. You know what I mean? Under the Desk was talking about how pervasive AI has come. I know, right? Did anyone got by those AI bunnies on the trampoline? I did, until they started jumping. When I saw them just on there, I was like, oh, someone put a bunch of bunnies on a trampoline. That's really cute and dangerous. And then I was like, oh, this is AI. You know what I mean? It was just like, it's giving slop, and I'm done with the slop. If you send -AI at the end of your search, it removes the AI. Oh, interesting. Okay, so let's talk about a time when they didn't have AI, where they just had the Great Depression. So Frances Perkins, her childhood name was Fanny. She was born April 10th, 1880. She was an American workers' rights advocate, and she was the Secretary of Labor from 1935 to 1933, to 1945. That is the longest serving person in that position ever. She was a member of the Democratic Party, and she was the first woman to ever serve in a presidential candidate. So that's just like a TLDR if you don't know her. She was in charge of the department, or she was Secretary of Labor during the Great Depression, and all of that. So that's like your TLDR if you didn't know her. Here's a picture of her. So let's get into her early life. Like we said, she was born Fannie Coralie Perkins in Boston in 1880, but her roots were in Maine. Her mother, Susan E. Bean, came from Bethel, and her father, Frederick Perkins, was born and raised in Newcastle on land along the Damariscotta River, where his ancestors first settled in the 1750s. So she, like, her family history truly goes back. The family farmed the land. They operated a brickyard. After the Civil War, the brickyard began to falter, so that is why the dad moved to Massachusetts, and the oldest son remained in Newcastle to manage the farm. And then in 1882, so when she was 2 years old, her father moved the family to Worcester, and he opened a paper goods business, so like stationery and things like that. And this business remains successful. It says to this day. I don't think that's true. This was from like a website about her. I don't know if it got passed down, but I tried to Google this business and couldn't find anything. So I don't know if they mean that the paper goods business is a successful business, or if they're talking about his, because I think they just mean overall, because I couldn't find anything about his. He maintained close ties to Newcastle. However, Fannie, as she was known to the family, spent her childhood summers in Newcastle on a farm with her grandmother, and frequently her grandmother and uncle would stay with the Perkins family in Worcester. Off topic, but how does credentialing work in the state that you work in? It's kind of complicated. You can basically either do it in your undergrad, do like a non-traditional program, or get a master's degree. I got a master's degree to get my certification because I was like, if I'm going to do work, I should get money for it, is kind of the way that I approached it. So Cynthia Otis Perkins was then a widow in her 70s. This is Francis's grandmother, was the center of the family. An extremely wise woman, worldly wise as well as spiritually wise. I am extraordinarily of the product of my grandmother. She said her wisdom guided her throughout her life. So her grandmother was extremely influential. It was at the brick house that was built in 1837 that was a wedding gift for her grandparents. This is where she was staying with her grandparents, like I mentioned. She heard stories about the French and Indian War. She heard stories about like all of these historic events that her family had been through. The fight for independence. It says that the grandma's cousin was the head of the Freedmen's Bureau and a founder at Howard University. I tried to find a source on that, but I couldn't find it other than her family's foundation website. I will now refer to myself as the center of the family. Worcester is pronounced Worcester. Ridiculous, I know. I hate the British. I hate them. I'll be prejudiced against British people. I don't give a fuck. Like, no. Talk normal. Where was I? Anyway. It says the founder of Howard University, and then it's saying his name is Howard. Did her family's website use AI? Anyway, you get it. She comes from this historic-ass family. She comes from a family that's been around, been in the United States for a long-ass time. Her family was involved in multiple wars. Her family's jobs have changed. You get it. She was raised with a deep appreciation of history and a pride of her patriot ancestry. She came of age of understanding her New England heritage and adopting Yankee values. Because keep in mind, she was born like post-Civil War, but like lots of sectionalism still, very much like tied to your region. And she grew up like in New England, which was like important in the Revolutionary War. They still really give a fuck about that up there. Where was I? The values that were core to her heritage were frugality, which is like being cheap, ingenuity, tenacity, and self-reliance, as well as the belief that the new nation, that was only 100 years old when she was born, held opportunities for all who sought and were willing to work for them. Her life would take her far beyond the humble Maine farm, but it's there where she returned year after year for rest and rejuvenation. So Maine is kind of home to her. Even though she's born in Boston, home is Maine. Perkins' house in Worcester was strict, conservative, and Republican. Remember, Republicans are the ones that ended slavery. It was different back then. So Fanny and her sister Ethel, who was 4 years younger than her, were restricted largely to people and events within their house and at their church. It was only when Fanny entered school that she encountered poverty. This is important. When she asked her parents why nice people could be poor, they gave her the accepted answers of the day, that poverty was a result of alcohol or laziness. Her father told her that little girls shouldn't concern themselves with such things. Frederick Perkins read to the family in Greek and gave Fanny lessons in Greek grammar when she was only 8. He also taught her to read at an early age and encouraged her interest in classical literature. Although it was very unusual for young women to attend college, it was always assumed that she would do so. So she came from a very educated family. She came from a decently well-to-do family. Like, they were not rich, but they were not poor. They could afford to send their child to school as a girl, which was unusual for the time. So I just wanted you to get a vibe of like her childhood and her values and her family. So she attended the classical high school in Worcester, and she earned a bachelor's degree from Mount Holyoke. That's going to be in the game later. Mount Holyoke College in 1902. Her bachelor's degree is in chemistry and physics. So to be a woman with a bachelor's degree in chemistry and physics in 1902 is like incredibly noteworthy. Apparently, I thought I included this, but I think I might have deleted it on accident. There were a lot of teachers in her family. Lots of women in her family were educated and became teachers, which was like kind of the only job for a woman back then. So it's like not unusual for her family, but this is unusual for like society at large. So while attending Mount Holyoke, she discovered progressive politics and the suffrage movement. The suffrage movement is women fighting for the right to vote in the United States, and she was named class president. So very educated, very much aware of like the social issues of the time. Oh shit, sorry, dropped this. This is a picture of her from the Mount Holyoke archives, and her quote is, "Being a woman has only bothered me in climbing trees." This picture is not affiliated with this quote, but I just wanted to put some text here, and I really liked this quote of hers, and I felt like in this picture, she's really serving. Like, look at her. Tyra would say she's smizing, personally. That's what I think. Oh, I should have refilled this. Oh, well. Okay. We're going to do a little sidebar. You guys know I love a sidebar. This is about one of her professors. I think that's important so you can understand how she's being educated. So one of her professors was Anna Mae Soule, who assigned students to tour a factory to study the working conditions. And Perkins recalled Soule's course as a very important influence on her life. She said, "I think she opened the door to the idea that the lack of comfort and security in some people was not solely due to the fact that they drank, which had been the prevailing view in my parental society." So she's basically saying, like, this professor helped open her eyes that, like, poverty and suffering can be a result of other things and not just the individual person's choices to drink alcohol. Thank you for saying that, because I looked at the pic and thought, what would Tyra Banks say about this? We have to free ourselves from the shackles. So this is her professor, Anna Mae Soule. She's super educated. She was trained as a teacher at the State Normal School in Ypsilanti, Michigan. Then she studied law, history, and economics at the University of Michigan, where she got her bachelor's degree and her master's degree. Her master's thesis was published as 2 monographs, The International Boundary of Michigan and The Southern and Western Boundaries of Michigan. She also presented her research at the Michigan Political Science Association meeting in 1896. So this, again, is one of Frances Perkins' professors who was very influential on her. So like we said, she was a professor of American history and the political economy at the Mount Holyoke College until she passed away in 1905. Her courses were considered innovative for her approach. For example, she assigned students to read The Souls of Black Folk by W.E.B. Du Bois and to tour a factory, like we said, and write about their findings. One of her students, Frances Perkins, remembered that this was significantly influential on her. So I think, like, the fact that this woman in 1896 was teaching these things is like so incredible. And this is also more evidence. Michigan is one of the best states for education and is very progressive. In college, I took a sociology class called Structured Inequalities, and we toured a lumber factory. I do not think the owner who gave us the tour realized why we were there. Real. So Soule was elected vice president of the New England Teachers Association in 1901, and her preserved correspondence, which means like after she died, the letters from her life that are preserved now, include letters from Susan B. Anthony, Woodrow Wilson, and W.E.B. Du Bois. So absolutely fucking killer resume. And again, I know this is not who we're talking about tonight, but this is like a big deal, and I felt like it's very relevant to Frances Perkins. If like she is saying that this was one of the most influential people in her life, I felt like it was worth visiting. So back to Frances Perkins. After college, she held a variety of teaching positions. That same truck that last week stopped is stopped again, you guys. Maybe it was last week or the week before, but interesting. Anyway, every kind, beautiful, smart person teaches. Like, the girlies love to teach. It's simply what's important. Like, the evidence is astounding. So after college, she held a variety of teaching positions, including one from 1904 to 1906, where she taught chemistry at Ferry Hall, which is now Lake Forest Academy, an all-girls school in Lake Forest, Illinois. In Chicago, she also volunteered at the Hull House, where she worked with Jane Addams. We'll talk about the Hull House a little bit more, but it's basically, it was like a giant nonprofit, I guess is the best word, where they offered like health services, immigration services, childcare services, teaching people how to read and write. And it was mainly directed for immigrants and poor people. And so the Hull House was like the first one. It's a really big deal. She changed her name from Fanny to Frances when she joined the Episcopal Church in 1905. I guess Frances seems more professional. In 1907, she moved to Philadelphia and enrolled in the University of Philadelphia's Wharton School to learn economics, and then spent 2 years in the city working as a social worker. I don't know what the fuck social workers did in 1907, but for a social worker in 1907 to be involved, my guess is things had to be pretty bad. Pretty fucking bad for the 1907 social workers to be involved. So this is pre-Red Scare, by the way, but during this time, she joined the Socialist Party of America. I know, I told y'all tonight was going to be for the sociology girlies, tonight was going to be for the leftist girlies, that's simply what we're here to talk about. But she left the Socialist Party after a few years because she felt like they were too idealistic. And I think that that's a really valid reason to leave a political party. You know? To be like, y'all aren't getting anything done. This account is helpful for my research. I'm researching how immigrants were imprisoned in mental asylums during the Progressive Era / Gilded Age because Americans didn't want society to change. Mental hospitals is going to come up tonight too. So, sorry. Shortly after, she moved to Greenwich Village, New York, and then she attended Columbia University, and she became active in the women's suffrage movement. In support of the movement, she attended protest meetings and advocated for the cause on street corners. So, like, she is in it. She is working. She's volunteering at the Hull House. She's a social worker. She was a teacher. She's passing out pamphlets about women's suffrage on the streets. Like, this is her shit. She cares about this. And then she got her master's degree in economics and sociology from Columbia University, which is in New York, in 1910. So she is an extremely, extremely, extremely educated girl boss. And in 1910, she achieved statewide prominence as the head of the New York office for the National Consumers League, and she lobbied with vigor for better working conditions and working hours. She also was a professor of sociology at Adelphi College. She's booked and busy like Mama Redacted, not for real. Like, there's so much suffering in the world, and we simply need to talk about all of it. The next year after this, she witnessed the Triangle Shirtwaist factory fire, which she says was a very pivotal event in her life. I think it's crazy that she says it was a very pivotal event, which to me, like, she cared about this work from the jump. She was really involved from the jump, but she said that the factory fire really inspired her to, like, kick it into gear, I guess. So the factory, I'm assuming most of you already know about this because a lot of us had this as a special interest as a child. But for anyone that doesn't know about this factory fire, I'll tell you the brief part of it. So the factory had hundreds of workers. It was mostly young women. They did not have fire escapes. They would lock the doors so that the women couldn't quit. It was just like very unsafe working conditions. Like I said, locked all the doors and stairwells to prevent employees from taking breaks. So when the building caught fire, the workers unsuccessfully tried to escape from the windows. So lots of women literally jumped to their death out the windows to escape flames. They had like tons of rags around and people would smoke in there. Like it was literally just so fucking unsafe. Like OSHA would scream if they could see it. And just a year before this fire, these women and girls had fought to reduce their working hours to 54 hours a week. I think they were working like 60, 70, and other benefits that Perkins was in favor of. And during this fire, 146 workers died. It was incredibly tragic. This was Saturday, March 25th, 1911. Here's a picture of the fire. The water like couldn't get all the way up. Like we said, the fire escapes were like non-functioning. Tons of women were locked in. It's really horrible. And Perkins blamed lax means like lazy, legislation for the loss. She said there was a stricken conscience of public guilt, and we all felt that we had been wrong, that something was wrong with that building which we had accepted, or the tragedy never would have happened. Moved by this sense of stricken guilt, we banded ourselves together to find a way by law to prevent this kind of disaster. So very, very passionate about this. Clearly it made a huge impact on her. As always, OSHA regulations are written in blood. They really are. So as a consequence of this fire, she left her position at the National Consumers League, and on the recommendation of Theodore Roosevelt, he was president from 1901 to 1909. So even though he wasn't president when he made this recommendation, he was a former president, so I guess like because she knew him or something, or he had observed her work, his opinion carried a lot of weight. So she became the executive secretary for the Committee on Safety of the City of New York, and was focused on improving fire safety. Al Smith was the governor of New York, and he appointed her as executive secretary of the Committee on Safety. So Theodore Roosevelt recommended her, but he didn't have the authority to appoint her because he literally was just a former president. So Al Smith was the one that actually appointed her. You guys see how things happen in politics. In this case, it ended up being good. So she became an expert witness and investigator for the New York State Factory Investigating Commission. She led investigators on inspections of state factories and work sites, and the commission's work resulted in the most comprehensive set of laws governing workplace and health and safety in the nation. 13 of the 17 bills that the commission spearheaded passed. 13 out of 17. That's insane. I don't know if any of you all have ever worked in local government or know about local government, but to have a commission get 13 laws passed is crazy. Absolutely crazy. These were codes for better fire safety, more adequate factory ventilation, improved sanitation, machine guarding, safe operation of elevators, and special measures for foundries, bakeries, stores, and other establishments. So, like, she's getting shit done. She's getting shit done. So when she says, like, it was very influential on her, what I see is that before this fire, she seemed like she was very big picture and idealistic. Like, I want to help people. Women's the right to vote. And then after the fire, she was like, let me get in the fucking office and change fire code B34. Like, she got more nitty gritty with her work. And as part of the Committee on Safety, they investigated another significant fire at the Freeman plant in Binghamton, New York, where 63 people died. And in 1912, she was instrumental in getting New York legislature to pass the 54-hour bill that capped the number of hours that women and children could work. 54 hours is still crazy as fuck for anybody to be working, but really an improvement for the time, because many women and children were working 70 hours a week. And you might be like, Ms. Redacted, why didn't they have the cap on men? If men wanted a cap, they could have passed it themselves. That's what I'll say about that. Men set this whole thing up. So don't be like, wait, she didn't care about the men. Her bill didn't include men. Every single other person in the government was a man. If they wanted to limit working hours for men, they simply could have done that. It's not her problem. So she pressed for votes for the legislation, and she encouraged proponents, including Franklin Delano Roosevelt, this is before he was president, to filibuster, while Perkins called state senators to make sure they would be present for the final vote. Like, she was very much involved in this legislation. And if you don't understand what this means, it's okay. She's calling senators, she's making sure they're going to vote for it, she's encouraging people to filibuster. Like, she is very much involved in the nitty-gritty. She really reminds me of Leslie Knope in a way. Like, even though technically her job is not to pass legislation, this is legislation that she cares about, that it was her job to do the research for the lawmakers to pass this legislation. So it seems like she really just wants to see it through, and she wants to make sure that, like, her vision is getting done and everything is just going to be really slay rock star and awesome. I'm, like, rationing my water. I really should have filled this up before this. Okay, that was a lot. Let me pause. How are we feeling? Any questions so far? I guess we're really not even far through this at all. But that's kind of her early career. On the mood board, she's the inspo. She really is. She really is. She did say some not awesome things that we'll talk about. But honestly, for the time, she is the Leslie Knope of the time. I was just thinking about Leslie Knope. I'm going to make my fiance watch Parks and Rec soon. He's never seen it, so no one tell him, because it's just something I'm working on in the background. Okay, so that's kind of her career up to, like, where did we leave off? 1912. Let's get in. We would all take a beat if you need water. You have rights. It's all the way downstairs. Like, I really just don't want to go all the way downstairs. I don't need it. So anyway, let's talk about her marriage and personal life. I'm not going to do it. You can tell me all you want. I'm not going to. Because I'm going to go down there and get distracted and forget you all are up here. And I'm not out. There's more in here. If I run out, I will go get it. That's the promise I will make you. So let's talk about her marriage and personal life. I even debated including this because I was like, who cares? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, that's her business. We care about her career. But her marriage and personal life is very personal to who she is. And I feel like it helps us understand her more. So I think when I'm talking about it, it's not sexist, because I always talk about people's personal lives. But if this was an educational video about Frances Perkins, maybe it would be sexist. I studied her in my construction safety class in college. She was the blueprint. She really is. So in 1913, she married Paul Cadwell Wilson. He was handsome, rich, and progressive. Crushing it. That's the 3 things that men should be. If men can only be 3 things, it should be handsome, rich, and progressive. Actually, I'm going to delete handsome and put loyal. Loyalty is more important to me than looks, personally. So, she defied convention and she kept her maiden name. Again, this is 1913. Don't say congratulations too early. She kept her maiden name. Incredibly progressive, because she said she did not want her activities in Albany in New York City. She means her career, her politics. Albany is the actual capital. She said that she did not want her career to affect her husband's career, because he was secretary to the mayor of New York. And she had to go to court to defend her right to keep her maiden name. They had to, I don't even know how that happened. I tried to look it up and it was, like, not really clear. I guess when she was getting the marriage certificate, they, like, denied her because she didn't change her name. And she was like, I'm not doing that. And they were like, tell it to the judge. And the judge was like, whatever, I guess, keep it. But isn't that crazy? So, because she didn't want her career to, like, be a conflict of interest or, like, cause any problems for her husband's career, she kept her maiden name. This is sad, so brand recognition, we get it, girl. That's what I was just saying. So she experienced a miscarriage in her first pregnancy, and then she got pregnant again, and she got really, really sick, and she had preeclampsia, so she had to get a C-section, and then her baby was stillborn. So that's incredibly sad. And that's kind of low-key why I included this, because I felt like I wanted to show her as a whole person. I think a lot of times when we see, like, famous career women, they make it seem like they didn't have a family or they only cared about their career. And, like, she isn't a complete entire person who, like, had a life and hardship and love and all those things. And I feel like it's relevant to who she is. And to me, it makes her political work more impressive because I'm like, damn, you went through all this and then you kept going. And also, C-section in 1913, or 14, not really clear on the timeline here, it didn't have a year. But isn't that scary? Just kill me. Like, I don't need to be alive. We're good. They probably had him, like, bite on a belt or something. It was probably horrific. Not that it's better today. I just saw an article the other day about how a bunch of women, when they get C-sections, the painkillers don't work and the doctors are like, you're fine, and they're not. And I'm like, can we literally just get 1 ounce of respect in the medical community? Just one. Childbirth is genuinely terrifying to me. It's genuinely a horror film to me, just because of what it is. Like, as if you need any other reason to believe it's a horror film. But it's a horror film to me, personally and specifically, because I'm petrified of needles. I hate doctors. I hate when doctors ignore me. Like, I feel like they're gonna have to call security on me if I ever have a baby, because I'm gonna, like, fight the doctors. Like, I've been removed from multiple doctor's offices, because, like, you're not gonna gaslight me and you're not gonna fuck with me. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're just not going to. And I'll fucking leave. The amount of doctor's appointments I've left in the middle of the appointment because I didn't like their vibe. In the middle of the appointment, I've literally picked up my stuff and been like, bye, more than once. So that's why birth is terrifying, because, like, you can't get up and leave. You know? It's horrific. They really need to get that figured out sometime in the next, like, 5 years for me, personally. That would be great. So then she got pregnant again. 3rd pregnancy. Tough. And she gave birth to her daughter, Susanna Perkins Wilkins, on December 30th, 1916. So she was married for a couple years. My 2 C-sections were pretty okay. I'm glad, but a lot of other people's weren't. So anyway, where was I? So she's been married for like 3 years. She has this little girl, and she says that her marriage with her husband, Paul, momentarily improved, but a year after Susanna was born, he started displaying a lot of symptoms of mental illness. He became very temperamental. He started drinking excessively. I know you were all rooting for Paul. And then he lost his inheritance to bad investments. And then the mayor lost his next election. So then Paul was unemployed as a political advisor. So that's not good. Things are really not good. And then he also was dealing with what we think was manic depression. We don't really know. People didn't really understand this at the time. We didn't have medications for it. So while you can't leave mid-birth, you can make the doctor leave. Great point. So anyway, he was manic depressive. People didn't understand that. We didn't have medication. We didn't have some of the things we have today. Even today, it's not great, but it's a lot better than it was in 1916. I can tell you that much. So he was not able to really keep a job because of his mental health issues. And he was often unable to help with household responsibilities. Again, because of his mental health issues. Probably more like a psychotic break. So here, let me put my computer on Do Not Disturb so that stops happening. What I think it was, I don't know how old he was at this time, but if she was born in, like, what was it, the 1880s, so maybe he's like late 20s, early 30s, somewhere around there. I know a lot of mental disorders and things like that can sometimes come up later in life, especially for men. So maybe it was that. I don't really know. You also have to think about all the poison people were putting in their bodies back then. It could have been caused by something, like some kind of like substance or drug or something. We really don't know. The amount of things you could just get at the pharmacy that we didn't research or understand. So I don't know where this came from. Maybe, who knows, but it happened. He's really struggling. So I'm not gonna be upset at the mental health issues. We all have mental health issues. I have many mental health issues that sometimes I'm not great at being on top of. But what I am gonna talk shit about is lost his inheritance due to bad investments. These were during years that the economy was like on the rise. What's wrong with you? Like, what? You were born rich. You could have just done nothing. You could have not invested in anything and just kept the money, and it would have been better. So, what do you mean you lost your inheritance? I have a very low tolerance for men losing their inheritance, because what do you mean? You lost it. On what? Investments? Invested in the ponies. That's what it's reading to me. Like, you were gambling. Don't tell me about the Gilded Age. I haven't watched it yet. I think we've all lost our inheritance to sports betting. The stress of having a child could be a breaking point for a lot of people too. So I would say that, but it's 1915 and men didn't take care of children, so I'm not going to give them that one. If it was a woman, I would agree with you, but like I highly doubt that the baby was causing that much fucking stress for a man back then. He was probably like, that thing doesn't shut the fuck up. Like, so yeah. Her personal life is not great. Like, her personal life is bad. And I wish I could be like, and then it all worked out, but it just didn't. So her husband was in and out of sanitariums. I guess that's the old-timey version of a mental hospital. So Frances Perkins became solely responsible for taking care of her family, so she has to fucking pay for his mental hospital, I assume, in addition to all of her bills, unless she maybe sent him to like a shitty government one. Maybe mental health because he couldn't get a business stop. He probably trusted Sean Merriman with his inheritance. Yes. So while she had some financial help from living with wealthy friends, primarily she paid all their bills until they were both dead. She also dealt with a myriad of stresses that they introduced to her life. Like, her husband just caused a lot of stress for her. A lot, I think. And she did not believe in divorce. So that's why she just kept rocking with him. So she has this daughter. Her husband has these issues. He's drinking a lot. But she doesn't believe in divorce. So she literally just keeps going. Like, the horrors persist, but so does she. And there's really no other information about her husband. He did not work after this. He didn't really have like much of a story. So to skip way ahead, again, they got married in 1913. His mental health issues started in 1917. So they had 4 good years of marriage, I guess. And then he had a stroke in 1952 and passed away after basically being like struggling and being in and out of sanitariums his entire life. So that makes me incredibly sad for her. It seems like she never really had like a super fulfilling romantic life, which is sad. I think everybody deserves that if they want it. And I don't know, maybe she didn't want it, maybe she didn't care, but I don't know, this just made me sad. So he was relying on her and then lost his job, then died. Typical man. Why wasn't he sent to World War I? Probably because he was in the mental hospital. I don't think they sent you there if you were in the mental hospital, I would assume. And then by World War II, I think he was probably too old. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit to talk about her daughter, and then we're going to pick back up with her career, because again, her career at this point where we're pausing on her career, she is still working, her husband's in the mental hospital. This is what's going on with her daughter. Unfortunately, her daughter Susanna experienced very similar mental health challenges as her father throughout her life. She and Frances Perkins, the mom, often argued, and they kind of sometimes were on good terms and sometimes weren't. So their relationship briefly improved when Susanna got married for the second time. Susanna got married another time we'll talk about. And then Susanna had a son named Tomlin in 1954, shortly after the father passed away. So Frances Perkins is now a widowed woman. She's becoming a grandfather. But by the time that Frances passed away later on, her and her daughter were mostly estranged. Like her and her daughter did not have a very good relationship. But Frances was an important part of her grandson's life. Like, she was very, very close with her grandson, despite, you know, the issues she had with her daughter. We will talk about this. Do we know where she was married do we know where she was living when she was married and had her daughter? So after her husband was like in the mental hospitals, she a lot of the times was living with rich friends, or there's multiple cases, which I'll talk about later, that she had different roommates who were other influential women. So because she did make a lot of money. We'll talk about like once she got some clout, she was rich. And so we'll talk about like not like crazy rich, but like definitely more than able to take care of herself. So she lived with some other women who were single and worked in politics. She lived alone on occasion. Her daughter was also in and out of mental institutions. So she lived in a variety of places in different situations, but it just kind of seems like she was just like doing the damn thing herself. So let's talk about her daughter, Susanna. 1938, Susanna Wilson wed to David Meredith Hare. She is the daughter of Labor Secretary Perkins, which we'll talk about how she became the Labor Secretary later. And I actually did reading it. This was her first marriage. It was very short. It was just like, they got married, yay. And then later, a couple years later, she got married again, but I couldn't figure out what year it was. But I think this was the second marriage, and I'm not 100% sure if this is correct. It really took a lot of piecing together. But I think she married Calvert Coggeshall, who was a famous artist. And then this picture, it says like the only daughter of Francis Perkins is getting married, and it's this famous picture of her. Their son's name is Tomlin Perkins Coggeshall, like we said, and he actually passed away relatively recently. He passed away in January. He had kind of a cool life. He had like some pretty normal person jobs in IT and business and things like that, but he did a lot of like legacy work about his grandmother Frances Perkins. Like he started the Frances Perkins Center, where I got a lot of this information from. So really cool that her grandson like carried on her legacy in this way, which I think is really positive. And then like I said, he passed away as an old man about 6 months ago. So back to her career, we're picking up in like 1915. She's working in politics. Her husband's in the mental hospital. Her daughter's kind of okay, but kind of not. And she held various positions in the New York state government. The gubernatorial election of 1918 was the first time that women in New York could vote. And she campaigned hard to capture the women's vote for Al Smith, who was her friend and ally during her prior work in Albany. So shortly after his election as governor, Smith appointed her to a vacant seat on the New York State Industrial Commission. So, side note about her nomination, in 1919 she was added to this commission, and her nomination was met with protest from manufacturers and labor. They felt like Perkins did not represent their interest. Smith stood by Perkins and said that she could be a voice for women and girls in the workforce, and pointed to her earlier committee that she was on, being like, look at all this great work she did. She's the right person for this job. So there was a delay in her confirmation. They said the delay was not because of her gender. They're like, it has nothing to do with her being a woman. It's because she didn't take her husband's name. So it is about her being a woman, just in a more complicated way. And they said that that was a sign that she was too radical. She was very, 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 very radical, and they did not want to confirm her appointment to this role. But ultimately, she was confirmed. She became one of the first female commissioners in New York and began working out of New York City, not Albany, at this point. The tabloids say it's because she's not a woman. Mind you, her opponent was probably Pete Hegseth. I don't know who that is. Which makes it about her being a woman, but in a dumb way. They're like, listen, we don't care that you're a woman. We care that you didn't take his last name as a woman. So, she is the first woman to be appointed into an administrative position in the New York State government, and she is making $8,000 a year, which in today's money is $184,000 a year, which is really fucking good. And it should. It's an important job. It should pay well. I'm confident it still pays well. So 6 months into her job, her fellow commissioner, James Lynch, called her contributions invaluable and added that from the work which Miss Perkins has accomplished, I am convinced that more women ought to be placed in high positions throughout the state departments. So within 6 months, she is appointed, confirmed, making good money, winning the hearts and minds of her colleagues. Absolutely incredible. So Al Smith, the governor, his goal was to weed out incompetence and corruption in the state labor department so that Frances and her fellow commissioners could enforce the laws that the factory investigating commission had brought about. So the commission she was on before that got all these laws passed, now she actually gets to enforce these laws. So probably super fucking lit to her. So for Smith's 4 terms as governor, Frances Perkins served as his closest labor advisor, working with him to build the legislative accomplishments of the prior decade. And in his final term, he appointed her to be the chair of the Industrial Commission. I think before she was just on the commission, and now she's in charge of it. Pete Hegseth is an alcoholic and was our Secretary of Defense. He used to work as a Fox News anchor. He's currently our Secretary of Defense? That's not good, you guys. So, her boss, the governor, Al Smith, he's like, I'm going to run for president. That's not good. I should have known that, and it's not good. But anyway, let's talk about a more positive time, kind of. So, Al Smith, her boss, who's the governor, is running for president, and she campaigned for him. And then when she went to Maryland to campaign, she said it was perfectly clear to them that the whole idea of having Smith for president was for the Roman Catholic Church to get control of the government and for military forces and everything else in the United States. It was one of the most deep-seated prejudice I'd ever met. So she's trying to campaign for her friend, and everyone is like, oh, he's fucking Catholic. Your fucking bitch-ass governor friend is Catholic and we're not voting for him. So he lost, unfortunately. But while she was working for him, she met FDR, who became the next governor of New York. So FDR liked her, so her shit kind of gets to keep going. Because normally, when there's a new governor, you get fired and they bring in all these new fucking people. But FDR really liked her, and she was doing really good work, and like we said, was very respected for how much she had accomplished, so he was like, yeah, girl, keep going for it. Roosevelt liked her, and against advice, he made her director of the state industrial department. She was now making $12,000 a year, which is $222,000 in today's money. Again, important job. It should pay well. She got along very well with him, and he came to trust her honest views about important state matters. During her tenure, she began to push a social agenda, which included developing unemployment services and women's right to work. So she's really doing the damn thing. So 1928, the Great Depression has not happened yet. FDR becomes Roosevelt. She's the state industrial commissioner, and she has oversight and responsibilities for the entire state labor department. And soon she became the most prominent state labor official in the nation. And she and Roosevelt searched for new ways to deal with rising unemployment. Because even though the stock market had not crashed yet, unemployment was on the rise. She said, "We have awakened with a shock to the frightful injustice of economic conditions which will allow men and women who are willing to work to suffer the distress of hunger and cold and humiliating dependence. We have determined to find out what makes involuntary employment," she said. So, very social agenda. She's on top of the unemployment. She feels like people should be able to work and take care of themselves and all of these lovely things. So, boldly, this is what got me. She challenged the Hoover administration. The Great Depression has started now. It's 1930, and January of 1930, President Hoover, who fucking sucked like the vacuum, was doing nothing for the Great Depression. President Hoover literally said, Americans are such hard workers, they'll be able to lift themselves out of this. So January 1930, Hoover administration says, employment is on the rise. We're going to begin to recover. And she called a press conference and said, the president is wrong. This is a woman in 1930 in a state office calling out the president of the United States. She's so brave. So, she did this because the New York Bureau of Labor Statistics showed that there was actually a decline in employment. So the president is saying more people have jobs, but she's looking at her report and she's like, no, they don't. Unemployment is the worst that it has been in 16 years. So she calls this press conference to basically call the president out, which I think is incredible. A lot of Parks and Rec references tonight. Swing at him again, Francis. Like, that is so girl boss of her. I really, really deeply appreciate that a lot. And she doubled down on it. Naturally, everyone freaked the fuck out. This was front page news. And then the Hoover administration was like, Francis needs to shut the fuck up. We're right. She's wrong. No, no, no. We're going to make things better. Every time they tried to just give vague, like, things are getting better, she would come in with statistics and be like, you are wrong. You are a wrong liar. You are lying and you are wrong. This is what she said. It is cruel and irresponsible to issue misleading statements of improvement in unemployment at a time where the unemployed are reaching their end of their resources. So she felt like you're trying to gaslight Americans. All these people are suffering and struggling, and you're trying to be like, oh, everything's fine. It's probably your fault. So she really didn't give a fuck about the hierarchy. Like, she was with the truth. Like, she was not, as someone in charge of one of the largest states in terms of populations, labor, she was not just going to sit there and, like, act like you could just fucking lie. We need a Francis these days. I know, right? I have a safety bulletin board at work I update, and Francis is going up tomorrow morning. Please do. So she is getting to motherfucking work. She's calling out the president, all that. This is who AOC thinks she is. That was funny. Oh, I just realized my chat is, like, in the wrong spot. Oh, I can't breathe. So, from her position in New York State, she worked with representatives of labor and industry to explore long-range programs to increase employment. She helped organize a conference on unemployment of 7 industrial states of the Northeast. She reorganized and expanded the state's employment agencies, but increasingly, she was very focused on unemployment insurance. Unemployment insurance is just like unemployment. Like, you get the money because you're unemployed. Like, the government gives you a little bit because you can't find a job. That's what it is. So, with her encouragement, Roosevelt became the first public official to commit himself to unemployment insurance. And this is the Great Depression, so people were pretty into that. Like, not the government, but, like, citizens. And he sent Frances Perkins to England and was like, go figure out what the British are doing. Go look at their unemployment system. And then she returned, and she had lots of recommendations for an American version of that British program. I do not think they ever did this while he was governor, but spoiler alert, FDR became president, and he did it then. So I don't know if they did this I don't think they did it within this office. I couldn't find anything saying that they did. But the research behind it and all of that ended up getting carried on to the national platform, so whatever. So, 1933 to 1945, FDR gets elected president in 1932, and he is bringing her with him. So her years of public service in New York were over. So now her views and her programs are going to be tested for the entire nation. In 1933, he summoned Perkins and asked her to join his cabinet. The president's cabinet is basically everyone that advises the president. So there's someone that advises them on housing and labor and the economy and the military and all these things, because you can't be an expert in everything. It's also just not money the government pays you. If you've had a job, you probably paid into it. It's a benefit you're entitled to. Yes, like Social Security. It comes out of your check, so that's why when you get it back, if you're unemployed, it depends how much money you made because you were the one contributing to it. Very good point. So anyway, when he approached her, so again, no woman has ever been in a presidential cabinet, ever. So most women would be like, yes, I'll do it. But instead of saying yes, she said, here is a list of policies that we're going to pursue. I am not going to join your cabinet unless you agree that I can try and do these things. They were a 40-hour work week, minimum wage, unemployment, workers' comp, the abolition of child labor, direct federal aid for unemployment relief, Social Security, a revitalized federal employment service, and universal health care. She was like, if you're not with it, I'm not coming. Which I love. Like, she was like, you need me. Let's remember that. So, this is literally just iconic of her. Like, 1930, and she's like, yep, universal health care. Write that down. And I felt like this meme was perfect from White Chicks for the lady, perhaps a salad, where he's like, for a lady, perhaps a cabinet position. And she's like, perhaps not. I'll have literally everything. And then you're welcome. I'll join the cabinet. She has an agenda. I'm in love with her. She's literally like, she's everything. Like, it's everything. Okay, so she's a girl boss with standards. So she said, nothing like this has ever been done in the United States before, she told Roosevelt. You know that, don't you? I love how mean she, like, I love how she talks to them. So he did agree to back her. He was like, yes, I will support you. And so he nominated her as the Secretary of Labor, and she became the first woman in our history to serve in the presidential cabinet. And this nomination was met with a ton of support from the National League of Women's Voters and the Women's Party, which makes sense. But the American Federation of Labor really criticized her. They really did not like her because she had not worked in unions before. They were like, she hasn't been head of a union. Like, they wanted someone who had worked in unions, which is understandable. I thought I made a slide about this, but I didn't, so I'll just tell you about it. So I know a lot of you might be like, who the fuck is the American Federation of Labor to criticize her? I actually think this is good. And I'll tell you why I think this is good. Because she was pro-union, but that is a good question to ask. And I think that I don't think this was the case in the 1930s at all, but I think I have started to see this happen. And I want to talk about this in a way that I don't want you to misunderstand what I'm saying. But I think a lot of political offices, people put women into political offices, and those women go on to do a lot of very harmful things. And I think for some reason, there's a perception that like, oh, but she's a woman. You get what I'm saying? Where it's like, oh, she's a woman. We put a woman in charge. When there are many women who have furthered inequality when they are given power. Furthered gender inequality, furthered racial inequality, furthered economic inequality. So I think Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Robart, fucking Caroline Leavitt, like those women kind of get this, like, they get viewed as less evil because they're women, which I don't think is right. And I think it is inherently sexist to assume a woman is going to be good and nice. I think everyone just assumes women are going to be good and kind and nice, and they're not. And it's sexist to assume that. So I think the American Federation of Labor criticizing her is, like, good. Because, like, as a Secretary of Labor, you should be criticized. And you should have, like, some people who agree with you and don't agree with you. I think, like, it's unrealistic to, it's infantilizing to them. That is the best word. I think it's infantilizing to women to be like, oh, well, we should support her because she's a woman. You shouldn't support Frances Perkins because she's a woman. You should support Frances Perkins because she's fucking phenomenal at her job. And I think that the American Federation of Labor does have the right to question her background. And I think it is a valid point to be like, she has never worked in a union. Even though we have seen, and later on we will see, she is very pro-union. That was very important to her. But I don't think this is a baseless or sexist criticism at all. I think that if it was a man who had not been tied to labor, they also would have criticized that. I'm sure that there were tons of examples of sexism in her career, but I just don't think this is one of them. And I am actually kind of fine with this. So she was, like, totally the president's favorite, which fucking kills me. Like, it literally just kills me that she's so blatantly his favorite. So as Secretary of the Department of Labor, she was in this position for 12 years, which is crazy, longer than any other Secretary of Labor and the fourth longest of any cabinet secretary ever. And she was, like I said, the first woman to hold a cabinet position, which means she is also the first woman to ever enter the presidential line of succession, which is really interesting for the time. So the selection of a woman in the cabinet was rumored in earlier administrations, but Roosevelt was the first one to do it, and there are very few exceptions that he disagreed with her. He consistently supported pretty much all of her goals and programs and kept her in the job for 12 years. Clearly, he really respected her, really felt like she got shit done. I think this photo of her is really beautiful and, like, striking, and I just really loved it. And this quote, again, unrelated to the photo, but I just liked it. She said, "I came to Washington to work for God, FDR, and the millions of forgotten plain, common working men." And when she says working men, I think she means men and women, obviously. But that's, yeah, hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. She's like, God, my boss, and the American people. I would cut God, but I liked that quote. So, from her earliest days in the cabinet, she was a forceful advocate for public works programs. Within a month of his inauguration, Congress enacted legislation establishing the Civilian Conservation Corps, which he asked Perkins to implement. This was a voluntary government work relief program that ran from 1933 to 1942. This was for unemployed, unmarried men ages 18 to 25. They eventually expanded it to 17 to 28. This was a major part of the New Deal. The New Deal is like all of the programs in the Great Depression. Were women a part of unions back then? Yes and no. Some unions, yes. Some unions, no. It depended on the union. I always wonder what they mean by God, just like service for service sake. So when people say they're doing it for God, this is what I've realized that they mean. I think for a lot of people, religion and God are their guide to morality and right and wrong. So when they say I'm doing something for God, what they mean is I'm doing this like for the righteous and correct and justice, like for the people that deserve it. And they view that as for God because God told them to do good unto others, is how I perceive that. Like I'm doing it for God means I'm doing it to further God's mission of doing good unto others. That's not maybe what she meant, but that's what I think. So anyway, it means guilt. So the CCC was a major part of the New Deal. They worked a lot with conservation and the development of natural resources in rural land. So here's some like graphics from the CCC. She helped develop this. She helped organize this. The CCC did a bunch of cool shit. Here's some stuff. This is CCC boys leaving for Camp Lassen National Forest for home. And this is a picture of a bridge in Little Rock, Arkansas, where I just was. I should have visited the bridge that the CCC built. So yeah, some cool projects if you didn't know what the CCC did. They also did a lot of like soil restoration and shit like that. I figured out that people didn't have an internal sense of morality when I was 9 years old at church, and it rocked my world. I'm agnostic now. Real. So here's some CCC workers in the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. This is some camps in Michigan. You can see they were tents and then they built barracks. This is a bunch of CCC members. So like, huge program. She's in charge of this huge program that did tons of good work, employed tons of people, built a ton of infrastructure for our country. They also had, I did not know about this, she camps. Get it? CCC? She. I love it. I love it. So the Federal Emergency Relief Association, FERA camps, were also called she camps, and they were established to kind of be like the CCC for women. The camps were organized by Eleanor Roosevelt, president's wife, who was a woman-focused counterpart to the Civilian Conservation Corps, which was just for men. Roosevelt found that the men-only focuses of the CCC programs left out young women who were willing to work in conservation and forestry and were prepared to spend the 6-month program duration living away from family and close support. So basically, the CCC camps were where unemployed men could go and like work, and they would get paid and get somewhere to live instead of being homeless on the street, and they would like cut down trees and fix soil and stuff like that. So basically, they didn't include women because they thought they couldn't handle it. Like they were like, oh, the women aren't going to want to do that work. And Eleanor Roosevelt was like, yes, the fuck they will. I know lots of women that would do that. So she lobbied for a sister organization to the CCC that would cater to young women. She proposed that this program would consist of camps for jobless women and residential worker schools. And the she camps were by certain detractors, and they were funded by a presidential order. I yearn for the she camps, no, literally. So Frances Perkins championed one of these camps after Roosevelt held a White House press conference for unemployed women in 1934, and Roosevelt's concept of a nationwide jobless women's camp was achieved. While the public largely supported New Deal programs, The she camps did not receive a ton of support. They reached a maximum of little over 5,000 women and overall served 8,500 women as a result of Roosevelt's support, compared to the CCC, which was 3 million men. So the CCC was 3 million men, and the most that was in the she was 8,500. So really, really, really different numbers. They probably solved the world's problems in one night and made the best soups on day 2. So here's some pictures from the camps. This is on the left, Eleanor Roosevelt making a speech at one of these. And then the one on the right is one of the camps in Maine. It kind of looks like a good time, I guess. So more on the details of the creation of this. Frances Perkins and Eleanor Roosevelt were really the ones that were doing it. President Roosevelt would go on to create it, like we said. I think this is kind of redundant. So in August 1933, this is when it was actually started. And 1 month later, Hilda Worthington Smith would join Woodward's as the FARA's Workers' Education Specialist. Worthington Smith went to work for President Roosevelt with a great deal of experience in her field. So they have this woman working it. And Eleanor Roosevelt and Ellen Woodward hosted a White House conference regarding the urgent need of women's jobs. And they suggested the idea of a nationwide program of residential schools where relief and recreation could be coupled with educational programs that instilled social responsibility. After receiving approval from the director, Harry Hopkins, and collecting funding, Eleanor Roosevelt and Frances Perkins launched the experimental camp. And it took several months to get it working. But people were kind of fucking annoying about it, I'll be honest. Once it was open, people said it was inappropriate for women to work in forestry. So, like, they had the women doing, like, men's work, but, like, it's forestry, like, it's trees. Like, women were cutting trails, doing outdoor work, but, like, these women quite literally signed up for it. Like, they made a choice to go there. And I think, like, manual labor is degrading for anybody. So, like, I think it's really fine. So it was kind of, like, fucked from the start because everyone was like, oh, you shouldn't have the women working there. And they were like, maybe we should, instead of focusing on jobs, we should focus on education and domesticity. But how the fuck is learning about domesticity going to fix your problems if you're a broke, unemployed, single woman? You don't need to learn about domesticity. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? So, really fucking cool idea. Kind of never really got off the ground because of bullshit. So a social worker became the camp's first director. She had previously worked with YWCA, the Girl Scouts, lots of schools. They began it. It started with 17 young women from New York. And eventually they only had like 20 to 30 women at the first one. So they're just struggling to get numbers, like I said. I'm going to kind of skip through some of this. But basically it just like didn't work super well. They ended up expanding the age a little bit. Originally it was like 18 to 25 and then they switched it to 18 to 35. Part of the reason that it wasn't working is because basically you had to prove that you had nowhere else to go. There was a lot of red tape. And for like young single women, it's hard for them to prove that. Like, how do you prove you don't have a husband? How do you prove you can't find a job? So because there was so much red tape, it was like just not going that well. And then they opened the age up to 40 and some more women joined, but it's still just like never really super got off the ground. But the women that were there, it did have like it worked and people enjoyed it. It was just never really super widespread or well known, which kind of sucks. Because I think it was probably like marketing. Because if you notice, we have all these fucking graphics for the CCC that we've seen everywhere. I had never even heard of these. So like, I just feel like they didn't market it as well. Yeah, like it could have been better, but it was better than I expected. So millions of men got jobs and trades and skills, and a few women got crafts camps. Yeah, basically. And originally the plan was to make it the same just for women. But then they were like, no, people aren't going to like that. We weren't signing up. Blah, blah, blah. But I think, like, it could have been way fucking cooler. So this is going to be less positive. We discussed sexism in the CCC. What about racism? Because keep in mind, Frances Perkins is not in charge of FARA, the she camps. She's in charge of this whole motherfucker. So that was just like one side thing that she was a part of that I wanted to mention. But let's talk about how racism was handled in her leadership. I will say I'm kind of disappointed here. I was really hoping that she was going to like rise and be like anti-racist and all of this stuff. And she just kind of didn't. Like she's just kind of went along with what the norm was, which really upset me because I thought like she was so progressive in so many areas, I would have thought. And then how her professor was reading W.E.B. Du Bois, I was like ready for her to be like racial equality, but no. So the first person enrolled in the CCC in 1933, and they set out to enroll a percentage of Black people that reflected the population of Black Americans in the census. So they wanted it to be like proportionate. This meant a cap at 10% of enrollment, but this did not account for the disproportionate impact that the Depression had on communities of color. In some locations, it was a challenge to get any people of color enrolled, and then in some states that had very large Black populations, no Black members had been selected to join the CCC. So the federal government was forced to get involved, which means Frances Perkins, because she's in charge. So basically what's happening is they're supposed to be hiring Black people, and they're just kind of not. So when Black Americans were getting discriminated against, it's Frances Perkins' job to be investigating it. When Black Americans enrolled in the CCC, their placement depended on the population. If a state had a high population of Black Americans, especially in the South, all Black companies were formed. Even though the CCC companies were supposed to be integrated, they were not. Segregation still existed. And again, she is in charge of this. Not in charge of segregation, but she's in charge of this part of the government, and it's supposed to be integrated and it's segregated, and she really didn't do anything about it. It was only in places with small Black populations that they were integrated. White communities protested Black companies working in their area, so most of the Black camps, meaning like a group, kind of like a military unit, most of those camps, even integrated ones, were relocated to very, very remote areas. So a lot of the Black men that were a part of the CCC were working in very, very rural areas. So you see on the top left, it's men that are different races, and then on the bottom left and the right-hand side, it's Black men, one of them in the Grand Canyon, one on like outside the tents that they would stay in while they were working. So, in 1935, Robert Fechner, the director of the CCC, was tired of receiving complaints about the program's integration. Again, this man reports to Frances Perkins. In 1935, he ordered complete segregation of colored and white enrollees. Even though discrimination went against the law that created the CCC, Fechner asserted that segregation was not discrimination. So even though the way the CCC was written, it was supposed to be integrated, it literally just wasn't. And she never enforced it or did anything about it. So that's why I said I was kind of disappointed in her. She didn't really she wasn't like, we should segregate it. But she could have done something and she didn't. It was literally her fucking job and she didn't. So by 1936, almost all Black Americans were placed into segregated companies that were overseen by white officers. This policy ended up increasing the need for Black companies, which then increased protest from white communities. So it's a lot of racial tension that she's really not doing anything about. This led Fechner to restrict the enrollment of Black Americans altogether. It was not until 1941, 1 year before the CCC that was dissolved, that African Americans were encouraged to enroll again. So really not great here. Robert needs to grow the fuck up and tell the people complaining to him to get over it. Because what it seems like happened, and I wasn't there, but what it seems like happened is that she was in charge. They were like, yeah, it's supposed to be integrated. And then no one really checked. And then he's getting all these complaints that it wasn't integrated. And he probably went to her and was like, everyone's complaining to me. I think we should segregate it. And she was like, okay, whatever, is kind of what it seems like happened. She didn't take a stand and she didn't really do anything. This kind of really surprised me because I felt like with everything else I had learned about her, she was so progressive and so ahead of her time and so brave. Went against the president, not afraid to say anything, not afraid to do anything. And then with this, it just seemed like she truly didn't give a fuck. So I'm not going to say oh, she was too scared to say something. She wasn't too scared all those other times she said things about other stuff that was controversial. So it just seems like this was literally just not important to her. Like, it seems like it just wasn't a priority of hers. She didn't really care about this too much. So, because this surprised me, I started digging a little bit to see like what were her views on race, what were her views on integration, and it's not something she talked about much, it's not something she addressed very often, but I did find an interview from the 1950s, so we are going to circle back to this when we get to the 1950s, but because she didn't really talk about it, I wanted to like keep it chronological. I mean, think about the violence the black workers faced from their white coworkers. It was also a matter of safety and community to segregate. The problem would have been the white camps got better amenities and better jobs and the black workers got nothing. Exactly. That's what I mean when I say like she definitely didn't do the worst thing, but it doesn't seem like she really fought super hard in this area either. Like it seemed like they just kind of took like the easiest, how do we make this not a big deal for the time. So, back to Frances. She is still working through the Great Depression. Roosevelt asked her to present a plan for an emergency relief program, and she delivered a young social worker from New York named Harry Hopkins, who had visited Frances in Washington with his own proposal. I also think the sign of a very good leader is like uplifting people with good ideas. I like that Roosevelt was like, you should do this, and she was like, this guy has a good idea. The proposal became what embodied the Federal Emergency Relief Administration, which Hopkins actually led. Before Roosevelt presented his final 100 days of legislation to Congress, the National Industrial Recovery Act, Perkins convinced him to allocate $3.3 billion for public works. From the money appropriated, serving as a member for the Special Board of Public Works, she helped ensure that this money was spent on socially useful projects: schools, roads, highways, housing, and post office. The public works construction employed 1.5 to 2 million people in 1934. So really, like, when we talk about how cool the New Deal was and how much it did for our country, that really was Frances Perkins. The roads that you've probably driven on is because it was her idea to have people build them. A lot of the schools, a lot of what's it called? Like airfields, like where the plane lands, those were built during this time. Lots of post offices. So very much leading the way, getting tons of money so bad, we really do need another New Deal. So then in 1934, he charged the Committee on Economic Security, chaired by Frances Perkins, with developing an old age pension program, unemployment insurance, and a national health care program. They ultimately dropped the national health care program, but they did create the unemployment insurance and the old age pension plan. And at Roosevelt's insistence, it's funded by individual contributions from its workers. So that's like we were talking about. Unemployment insurance, Social Security, it comes out of your paycheck. How much you get in affects how much you get out later. And that is kind of the way this system was designed. So I know in the United States, we do not have a robust social safety net. I know compared to most other developed countries, compared to most like European countries, we do not have a social safety net. But the very, very limited social safety net we do have was created by her and low-key hasn't been updated like ever. So this is her when they are signing the Social Security Act into law in 1935. She, only woman there. She's crushing it. Other than like the ignoring segregation and racism and all of those problems. Really, really getting a ton done during this time. So the Social Security Act also creates the insurance against unemployment. It's a part of the New Deal. It did end up going to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court upheld the act because it was designed very well by a smart person who understood the law. I like that she didn't change her outfits. Really like Steve Jobs type shit. She was like, this is my look. Last week when I did lazy person hacks, pick a few outfits and just wear them. And that's actually an efficient person hack. So, the law established this program. It's funded by payroll taxes over the ensuing decades. This has contributed to a dramatic decline in poverty among the elderly, and spending on Social Security became a significant part of the federal budget, but we do fund it. The Social Security Act also established unemployment insurance, and it gives aid to dependent children. So, like children whose parents have passed away, things like that, they do get Social Security money. And that was like when Doge was like talking about cutting Social Security. I don't know who it was. Someone was on the news and was like, we found X number of people that were under the age of 18 getting Social Security, so we're trying to rectify that. And the news anchor was like, yeah, those are orphans. Like, orphans get Social Security. Anybody got a problem? Or like what? So, another big accomplishment of hers, in 1938, Congress enacted the Fair Labor Standards Act, which did have a lot of her support. She helped create it, even though she's not in Congress. She was involved, kind of how she did when she was back working in New York. This established minimum wage and banned child labor. Yay! So literally, most of the stuff she set out to do, she is doing. I would say the only thing on her list that she did not accomplish was universal health care, which we still haven't, so I'm not going to blame her for that. But like when you think through that list she gave of like minimum wage, 40-hour work week, like all these things, this is what gives us time and a half for overtime for 40-hour work week. This is what ended child labor. She got the minimum, like, she really accomplished a lot of what she set out to do. Racism again. During the congressional debate over Social Security, the program was expanded to provide payments to widows and dependents of Social Security recipients. Job categories that were not covered by the act included agricultural labor, domestic service, government employees, which really surprised me, and many teachers, nurses, hospital employees, librarians, and social workers. So as a result, 65% of the African American workforce was excluded from Social Security, and 27% of the white workers were also excluded. So again, with the whole racism thing, it doesn't seem like she went out of her way to harm these people, but it does not seem like she thought about them in the planning of this, or if she did, she didn't really care that it negatively affected Black Americans more than white Americans. Many of these workers did end up getting covered later on because Social Security did expand in the 50s. But again, like, she helped design it and they designed it this way. So like, again, it's better that we have Social Security than nothing, but it would have been way better if agricultural laborers and domestic workers and all these other people were included as well. And it kind of surprised me that teachers weren't included because she was a teacher. And again, like, I don't know if she wrote that part because, like, she's one person and there's other people involved in this, but I don't know. I just didn't like that. And I debated including it, and I was like, no, like, I have to be truthful about, like, her legacy, and it's not all 100% positive. So this is what I have to say about Frances Perkins and racial oppression. Oh, there's a massive cut on my leg. Perfect. So it doesn't seem like she maliciously furthered inequality. It does not seem like she was someone who was like a racist individual who was furthering racism. But she was not anti-racist. She did not choose to take a stand against it, to talk about it, or to do anything about it. And we can clearly see from her legacy, she is the type of woman who takes a stand. If she cares about something, she takes a stand. And when you are neutral, you take the side of the oppressor. When you do nothing, when you don't care, the oppressor gets stronger because you don't care. So that's kind of the category I would put her in. Someone just mentioned the current defense secretary, and I just got a notification that he may run for office in Tennessee. Is that allowed? That feels like a demotion. I don't know. So yeah, I just felt like I did want to talk about like her racism and her lack of progress in this area because I think it's very relevant. And honestly, really was disappointing and surprising for me. Like, that's the best way I can describe it. It's just very disappointing and surprising because, again, like, I felt like I expected her to take a stand and was very disappointed that she didn't. But we're going to move on a little bit from that. Like I said, we will come back to it and read that article where she was interviewed in the 1950s. But let's move to immigration. So like we talked about, she worked at the Hull House. The Hull House was very pro-immigrant. Like, they served the immigrant community. They served at-risk women from all racial and ethnic backgrounds, most of them immigrants. And Frances Perkins was very passionate about making the United States a safe haven for refugees. So that is, I guess, one W from her, which I find interesting that she would not like. It's just so odd to me that it seems like she's so good at observing inequality, seeing how it happens, seeing where it comes from, that when it comes to, and like with different ethnic groups, but when it comes to Black Americans, it just seems like she truly does not give a fuck, which is really depressing. So let's go back to that current timeline. When she became Secretary of Labor, she also was in charge of overseeing the Immigration and Naturalization Services, which was a part of the labor way back. It's not now, but back when she was in charge, it was. So as the Great Depression worsened, this is before she took office. Racism is nonsensical when you're not racist. So as the Great Depression worsened, when President Hoover was in office, he issued instructions for the State Department to block any immigrant that could not support themselves. So let's say like I came here, my family's from Scotland. They came here before this, but let's say I was from Scotland and I came to the United States. It's 1930, the Great Depression's just starting. Herbert Hoover's president. The State Department would be like, hold your horses. Do you have money? And unless I could show them money, they would be like, you have to go back to Scotland. If you're poor, you can't come here. We have enough poor people. That was the immigration situation when she took office. Because before I tell you what she did, I want you to know what she came into. Being pro-labor rights as your whole personality, but not vocally anti-slavery or anti-racist says a lot. Well, I won't say anti-slavery because slavery was abolished before she was born, but she's not talking about sharecropping. She's not talking about indentured servitude. She's not talking about labor in the prison system in the South. Like, there's lots of racial labor issues she's choosing to not address that are very reminiscent of slavery, even though they're not literal American slavery. They're just like slavery by another name in a different form. So, where was I? So, the current immigration system is basically just deny anyone that is not rich. And this is when Hitler is coming to power as well. To give you some context for the world, Hitler and the Nazis are beginning to rise to power in the 1930s. So when Perkins took office in 1933, she was like, you know what? We should let people in. Even if they're not rich, we should let them in. And she wanted to use her influence to assist Jewish people that were fleeing Nazi persecution. She met a lot of opposition for this. So this is what I mean when I say it's surprising to me that she wasn't vocal about racism, because she clearly is okay with facing opposition. She faced a lot of opposition for this, which I do think is really admirable, but it would have been more admirable if she kind of kept it consistent. So, many people in the United States were very anti-Semitic at this time, so there was a lot of opposition from people in the State Department. And one of Perkins' staff reminded her, the State Department consuls are not known for their sympathy towards immigrants, particularly towards Jews. So she kind of takes this on as like, we should be helping these people, but no one really agrees with her. No one gives a fuck about this, and everyone's just like really xenophobic and really against it. So she has to get a little bit creative, because keep in mind, she's the Secretary of Labor. So she was trying to figure out a way to assist immigrants, and she realized that there was an older law that gave her power in this area. As Secretary of Labor, she was able to accept a charge bond from an applicant that the State Department had rejected. So if the State Department says, you're poor, we reject you, she can let them in if the immigrant or a sponsor writes a check to the Labor Department, so that if that immigrant ever needs public assistance, instead of it coming from taxpayer money, it comes from this check from their sponsor. I think this is a little more similar to how it works today, but not exactly. So as an immigrant, you're essentially insuring yourself from becoming unemployed and requiring public assistance. So if they otherwise qualified for a visa, then they could enter the United States. So I think this is really cool that she you can tell she's super smart and she knows the law. Like, she designed Social Security in a way that it was not struck down by the Supreme Court. She's using existing laws to her advantage to help this group of people that she wants to help. Oh, a literal sponsor. That makes sense. Exactly. This is like the early form of a sponsor. The State Department did not appreciate this. They felt like this was not her job. They felt like, you're in charge of working. We're in charge of State Department. Leave us the fuck alone. And a legal battle ensued between the two departments. The Attorney General finally ruled that Perkins could bring immigrants to the United States using charge bonds. So she ultimately won this. But her commissioner of immigration, Daniel McCormick, never actually used this because he was afraid that if they had an influx of Jewish refugees, there would be a rise in anti-Semitism in America. Isn't that the same thing as needing to have money, though, or is it really a different amount of money needed? I think the difference is this could come from a sponsor and the other one had to be your money. So I think some of the sponsors were like nonprofits and things like that was her idea. So I think that's how it's different because it doesn't have to be your money on you. It can come from like somebody. So yeah, that I also find kind of odd that she went through all of this court battle and hoopla to be able to do this. And then her commissioner of immigration never did it. I feel like that's so strange. Very odd. I feel like I don't like that. The government probably kept the money in a high-yield savings account and kept the interest. That too. Where was I? So Secretary Perkins did continue to advocate for immigrants and refugees throughout her tenure. What she did do, so even though they didn't end up doing that charge bond thing that she came up with, she did reduce the cost that was required to obtain a student visa. So she made it much cheaper to get a student visa. She also made it legal for foreign students to work. So she did remove a lot of the income barriers that were preventing people from coming to the United States. She also worked with a German Jewish children's aid organization, and they did set up a bond that allowed more than 400 Jewish children to come to the United States without needing financial sponsors as individuals. So that's like I was saying earlier, the money is coming from this aid organization, not like your sponsor that you asked for the money. And in the wake of Kristallnacht, if you don't know what Kristallnacht is, it's like really bad. And it was a night like, it's the night of broken glass. So this is when lots of Jewish homes and businesses were raided. And a lot of people faced a lot of violence on this night. I do believe a lot of people died this night. I don't know the exact number. This is the night that a lot of Jewish families started going into hiding after this night, when their businesses and homes started being openly attacked by the police and by citizens. This is when a lot of Jewish families went into hiding, like the Anne Frank story that you hear. I feel like we don't talk enough about how immigration issues around the Holocaust. There was a ship of Jewish refugees that came to Florida. Florida said, no, goodbye, made them turn around, and most of those people died in concentration camps in coming years. Like, the United States likes to act like the hero in the Holocaust when literally they were turning away refugees and sending them to their deaths. She also persuaded FDR to extend temporary visas. So a lot of German Jewish people were in the United States on tourist visas, and Frances Perkins convinced the president to make those visas like permanent and they could stay in the country indefinitely. And she later wrote, and this, I love this quote, "Immigration matters have to be decided in a few days. They involve human lives. There can be no delaying." And that's what I think is so like true and so true throughout history. And like, that's what breaks my heart about like all the injustice around the world today is like people just sitting there debating about it while like I've talked about, like Palestinian children are literally starving, and then like politicians will sit there and just talk about it for weeks and weeks and weeks. And like, these are people's lives, and refugees and people living through war and people living through persecution and people being faced with a genocide. You cannot dilly-dally on these decisions. Like, you need to move quickly and you need to move very effectively. And it just like is a lot to me. So I really admire her for this specifically. I think like she saved lives with this. 12,000 people that were able to stay, 400 children. Like, is that millions? No. But to those people, that she saved their life. Absolutely. But despite her hard work and good intentions, the Department of Labor was not able to significantly expand immigration just because a lot of this was not within her control. It was a lot having to do with Congress, lots of other people who are involved in these things. But it seems like it was very deeply personally important to her and her mission. And I really admire her really taking a stand on that. And she was faced with a lot of personal attacks and confrontation whenever she was trying to lift immigration restrictions, and not just by the State Department, but even by progressive allies and the American Federation of Labor. The American Federation of Labor was pretty anti-immigrant because they felt like it would make the wages go down because a lot of like immigrants and refugees were willing to work for less money. So that's why the union was against them. Not to say that they're right. They should just be fighting for everyone to have a livable wage, but that was where it came from. Anne Frank's family was denied immigration to the United States. Yes, many families were. So this is one example of something she did that's, again, like clearly she was okay with standing up. In 1934, an Australian immigrant named Harry Bridges led a longshoreman strike in California that resulted in 2 deaths and caused a public frenzy. Multiple attempts to deport him failed because investigators could not find any grounds to do so. The U.S. Congress also could not find a way to punish Briggs directly and instead set its sight on Perkins, and they tried to impeach her for having allegedly defrauded the United States by coddling and protecting from deportation certain aliens. Coddling and protecting, so because they wanted to deport him and they couldn't figure out, they were like, we're going to impeach her for it. Which makes no fucking sense. These impeachment efforts failed, but damaging rumors circulated, and it became a rumor that she was a communist or a communist sympathizer. So that's pretty lame. And she didn't even really do anything for this. So in 1936, her interest in aiding immigrants led to a rumor that she was secretly Jewish and was born under a different name. So there was this rumor that's like, oh, she's only doing this because she's Jewish. She said that's un-American propaganda. It's an appeal to racial prejudice. She said she did not know of anyone Jewish in her ancestry. And she said, if I were Jewish, I would make no secret of it. On the contrary, I would be proud to acknowledge it. What this kind of reminds me of is, if y'all remember when everyone thought Lady Gaga was like trans or something like that, and she just like wouldn't do anything about it. Like she was like, and if I was, so what? So what? And would that be the worst thing? That interview where Lady Gaga was like, if I had a penis, would that be the worst thing ever? That's what this quote has like the 1930s energy of. That she's like, I'm not, and if I was, who fucking cares? I would have told you I was. Like, I wouldn't be hiding it. And I felt like that's like a really good way to handle that. And I think that was very brave of her to just be like this time that like she's fighting to help Jewish refugees. There's all this anti-Semitism rising in the entire world, including the United States, and everyone's like, you're Jewish. And she was like, if I was, I'd be proud. Check it. So clearly, she does know how to take a stand, like I said. So as the war escalated in Europe, many Americans believed that there were foreign spies infiltrating the country, and a lot of people thought that the Jewish immigrants, who were literally just trying to escape concentration camps, were actually foreign spies. So President Roosevelt moved the Immigration and Naturalization away from the Labor Department and into the Justice Department. So Frances Perkins lost her influence over immigration and refugees, which sucks because it seems like she was doing more than most and was actually like trying to help people. Was she perfect? Could she have done more? Probably. But it does seem like she was actively trying to improve people's lives and help them escape persecution. So she went to Geneva in 1938. She gave a speech at the International Labor Organization where she called on the organization to make a contribution to the world economic recovery, while she avoided being dragged into political problems, and she defended the participation of the United States in the International Labor Organization, which it joined in 1934. So she is active on the world stage as well, and she did stand with union leaders, like we said with the Harry Bridges thing. She did like not help them deport him, and then they tried to impeach her for it. And he actually stayed and was the president of this union for another 40 years. So she could have gone after him like everybody else did, and she chose not to, and they tried to impeach her for it, and it didn't fucking work. So, lots to talk about. After the death of President Roosevelt in 1945, Harry Truman replaced the Roosevelt cabinet, and a guy named Louis Schwellenbach became the Secretary of Labor. So Frances Perkins' tenure as Secretary of Labor ended in 1945. So she was Secretary of Labor for a very long time, for 12 years, one of the longest terms anyone's ever had. She's not dead yet. She keeps going to work, so don't leave yet. But this was kind of like the height of her career when she was the most well-known and doing the most. And I think that's just crazy that she literally built so much of the American social safety net and the society that we have today. So after she stepped down from Secretary of Labor, or I guess was low-key fired, President Truman did ask her to serve on the United States Civil Service Commission, which she accepted. So even though she doesn't have the big job anymore, she is still involved. She spoke out. This is what kills me. She spoke out against government officials requiring their secretaries to be physically attractive because there was a shortage of secretaries in the U.S. government. So you mean to tell me when there was a shortage of secretaries, they still were requiring people to be hot? They were like, I know we don't have enough employees, and you're very willing and able to do this work, but the body isn't bodying for me. How did men end up in charge of anything? Like, I genuinely, that's a real question that I would like an answer to. I know the answer, it's violence. Are you kidding me? Why did it take a woman explaining that for them to deal with this? So, she did leave the Civil Service Commission when her husband died in 1952. We already knew her husband died. During this period, she published a memoir titled The Roosevelt I Knew, which covered her personal history with Franklin Roosevelt. So not so much a memoir, as more of like a career book of this very specific time. So it's the 1950s, and then she says this fucking bullshit. Y'all are going to be mad. Like, this is not good. Like, I don't want to destroy everything I just told you, but this low-key might. So, there was not much about her views and work and racism and things like that, but I did find this article. Frances Perkins and the Limit of the New Deal Racial Liberalism. On September 16th, 2019, Elizabeth Warren, blah, blah, blah. I'm actually going to, skip through some of this because it's a bigger article. So, this person is talking about... Elizabeth Warren said something about Frances Perkins, and this author says, as I saw Perkins' name in the news, I was reminded of a section in my dissertation that did not make it into the eventual book. So this is like they were going to put it in their dissertation, but they didn't. This is how deep in the internet I am. Towards the end of her life, Perkins sat down for an extensive oral history. So let's get into the article that is just discussing an interview she did. I could not find the interview of this oral history, but I just found this article that talked about it. So this was at Columbia University with a historian. It was a wide range of topics, but she briefly discussed civil rights advocacy during the Roosevelt administration and offered a strikingly negative opinion about Brown versus Board. Brown versus Board is the Supreme Court case that outlawed segregation in schools. So, Albertson was asking Perkins about James Brines, who had served in the Roosevelt and Truman administrations. By the time of the interview, Brines was governor... I don't know how to say that name, was governor of South Carolina, and Albertson mentioned his opposition to immigration. So the interviewer casually mentions that this other guy is against integration. I think the interviewer, like us, assumed she would be very pro-integration. So he's like, oh, you know that guy that's against integration? And this is what she says. Well, I wouldn't like to tell you what I think of the Supreme Court decision on the matter. It was a purely political decision that never should have been made. Why would she say that? Why would you say that when you could have just shut the fuck up? What's wrong with you? when Albertson said that he felt like it was so darned long overdue. So the interviewer is like, oh, I felt like it was overdue. When she's saying like, oh, it was political, it was terrible. This is what she said. Oh, my dear fellow, now look here. It's not overdue. It's just begun to loom up as due. Nearly due. No, wait. Nobody ever heard that segregation was wrong until about 5 years ago. I never heard such a thing. I never heard of such a thing. Certainly we should be nice to them. You can read the word she used. Certainly we should treat them right. What do you mean? So she's like, yes, we should treat them nice and right, but segregation's fine. Albertson brought the subject back to the World War II era, which they had been discussing. Segregation began to come up then, Perkins admitted, stating that after NAACP leader Walter White began to agitate, began to be raised. See, he was a smart agitator. Gosh, he's been agitating for 20 years, Albertson said. No, not for 20 years, Perkins replied. He didn't have a chance to do it. He didn't do any agitating until well into the Roosevelt administration. It was well into the Roosevelt administration before the word segregation was mentioned. Yes, it was. So she's basically saying, like, this is a new fad. No one cares about this. In the 50s is crazy, right? Isn't this absolutely insane that she said this? When Albertson noted that during the war, it was a boiling point, Perkins acknowledged it was being raised and again said that Walter White had been agitating and was putting his finger on the places where it mattered, like military recruiting. Albertson became frustrated at this point. So help me. I have never heard of Walter White. All I saw was 2 drinking fountains side by side and I got the word. Perkins acknowledged that she always used to feel queerly in segregated facilities like waiting rooms and for trains. So she's saying like, oh, I did feel weird about it. But like, this is just so odd to me. Don't meet your heroes for real. For real, don't meet them. When Albertson brought up the issue of getting in the back of the bus, Perkins said, yes, but they got on the bus after all. The bus hauled them where they wanted to go. So she just seems very ignorant, which is so surprising to me. And again, like, she's not calling for violence. She's not using racial slurs. She did say, like, we should treat them well. But, like, I'm just so shocked she's talking like this because she's so progressive and so smart in every other arena. I don't understand this. No, I want to know the conversations behind the scenes when they had to segregate the CCC and when she was putting for suffrage, because I know she was not advocating for black people. That's another good point. She was probably a white suffragist as well. I mean, we know she's white, but you get what I'm saying. Segregation is just some new buzzword. Meanwhile, the president who put her in his cabinet enabled the internment camps for Japanese and Japanese American people. Exactly. So, like, yikes on bikes. So, a bit later, Albertson asked Perkins bluntly whether she meant to tell me all in your life you've never, this is my favorite quote, to tell me in all your life you've never considered the proposition that there was something perhaps a little bit awry about the system of separate schools sitting in the back of the bus and separate drinking fountains. Perkins said that it is a way of life in the South. When asked if she accepted it, she said that she did not, but she didn't live in the South. Albertson pushed her on this point, noting that she traveled to the region during the 1948 campaign and saw these things. Perkins replied, yes, and they didn't vote, and we knew that they didn't vote. I went there. When Eugene Talmadge told me that in the state of Georgia we had 100% of the Anglo-Saxon population, I said, well, what were those strange black things I saw walking around the streets? If they weren't the population, what were they? I mean, that startled me a bit. But the way I regarded it, the laws of the South are quite separate in their way of thinking. It's the way we've gotten along, and I've always regarded it's not my function to tell the South what to do. So she's basically saying, like, I went to the South, I saw the racism, I noticed it, I said something to my boss, but ultimately, it wasn't my problem. Girl! It was always my function to do what I thought was right, where I lived, not try to solve the problems that they had. She doesn't see their humanity. Like, it's really not good. Perkins' forthright opposition to Brown versus Board and her general comments on the Jim Crow South were striking, coming from someone who's considered one of the more liberal members of Roosevelt's cabinet. Indeed, some historical scholarship has painted Perkins as a friend of civil rights. Perhaps this is less surprising, though, when placed in the context of the limits of the New Deal white racial liberalism. Political actors could simultaneously be supportive of civil rights activists on some issues while opposing them in other areas. Roosevelt's economic policies helped pull black voters away from the Republican Party, but he was famously reticent to speak out against lynching because he feared upsetting his awkward but successful electoral coalition of Northern liberals and Southern segregationists. So it's literally like votes over everything. While Truman went further than Roosevelt with concrete policies like integration of the armed forces, who was not always sympathetic to civil rights activists after his presidency. Commenting on the sit-in movement, Truman told his supporters, "If anyone came into my store and tried to stop business, I'd throw him out," adding that the should behave himself and show he's a good citizen. Many white New Deal liberals like Perkins were comfortable with the certain parts of the mainstream civil rights agenda in the 1930s and 40s. The more extensive civil rights demands in the next 2 decades were often much more difficult for them to accept. So I know that was long, and I know that that was a very, very wordy, but I felt like it was too important to skip, and I couldn't really summarize it. Like, I just wanted you to read the article, and like, I know the screenshotting was not good, but you saw how like weird and choppy it was. It was hard to copy and paste. She absolutely believed in separate but equal, and she's a full-blown racist. That is wild. Did she try and hide it? Or was everyone just as racist, so they were all happy not to call it out together? I think it was that. Like, I think because she was not in favor of lynchings and like a violent racist, it just never was brought up. Like, ever. Which is not good. It reminds me of those progressives who won't acknowledge what's happening in Gaza. Their dream of progress doesn't include prosperity for everyone. I think that's a really good comparison. Like, people that want to brand themselves as a progressive and say that they're progressive, but their progressivism is in a very, very limited sphere. So, yikes. I guess no one cared because I could not find any backlash to this. I could not find anybody else talking about this. Like I said, the only thing I found was this one article where someone said, I was going to include this in my dissertation, but I didn't, so here's an article about it instead. So, damn. I had to dig deep for that one, but damn. Yikes. Not good. I hope that didn't ruin her legacy, but I think it just gives us a more accurate view of her legacy. So side note about her personal life, someone asked about this. While her husband was ill and after he passed away, she often had female roommates of other women in politics. She shared a home in Georgetown, D.C. with an old friend, Mary Harriman Rumsey, who had founded the Junior League. And then Rumsey passed away in 1934, and the arrangement was for very practical reasons because a article basically talks shit about Frances Perkins because she didn't invite people to her house, but she lived in like a small apartment with another woman. So people were like, oh, she doesn't meet social obligations. Like, she has this money, she has like this important job, but she's not hosting dinner parties at her family home. And she was kind of like, I live in this shitty apartment for practical reasons. My husband's in a mental hospital. My daughter's also in the mental hospital. So what? Someone Megalaflame. I think this is a really good to be reminded that people aren't all good or all bad. Exactly. Like, it's impossible to label a historical figure as like good, bad. They all have very nuanced, very complicated legacies, including her legacy that's mostly positive, but not perfect. Not to like excuse it, but like, it's just interesting. And I think it's important to meet all parts of it. And then later she shared a home with a Democratic, sorry, someone just texted me. I thought my computer was on Do Not Disturb. So later she shared a home with Caroline O'Day, who was a Democratic congresswoman from New York. So she just like roomied with the few other women in politics. So her retirement era. Following her government service career, she remained active and returned to education. She was a teacher and lecturer at the New York State School of Industrial Labor Relations at Cornell until she passed away in 1965. She died at age 85. She also gave guest lectures at other universities, including a 15-lecture series at the University of Illinois. When she was at Cornell, she lived in the Telluride House, which was like very, very prestigious. She was the first woman to become a member of that renowned intellectual community. Kristen Downey, the author of Women Behind the New Deal, The Life of Frances Perkins, said that her time at the Telluride House was probably the happiest phase of her life. And this is a residential community at Cornell with like super fucking important people. From her roomie's wiki, becoming so enamored of eugenics that her friends nicknamed her Eugenia. Oh my God, and that was her roommate? Yikes. Yikes, yikes, yikes. That's what I mean. Not a perfect legacy, even though she did a lot of cool stuff. This is a picture of her as an older woman lecturing at Cornell. Another really good quote from her that I liked a lot. There's always a large horizon. There's much to be done. I'm not going to be doing it. It is up to you to contribute to some small part of the God, I can't fucking read. It is up to you to contribute some small part to a program of human betterment for all time. So she's telling her students basically like, I'm old, you figure it out. It's up to you to make the world a better place. And she passed away in 1965 from a stroke in the hospital when she was 85 years old. She was buried alongside her husband, Paul Wilson, in Maine, a short distance from the brick house, like we talked about, where she spent a lot of time with her grandmother that she always considered home. And she was known locally and is buried as Mrs. Paul Wilson. So you're one of the most successful women in politics of the time, had to go to court to keep your name, and you still end up buried next to your husband under his name. Okay. Cool. Awesome. Incredible. Incredible, incredible work. And then I wanted to end not on that. I wanted to end on something more positive. This is her grandson, Tomlin. He is being photographed with his parents' graves. And I will say her actual headstone says Frances Perkins Wilkins. When you look it up, it says Mrs. Paul Wilson, but on the actual stone, it does say Frances Perkins Wilkins and Secretary of Labor, USA. So I did want to show you her actual headstone because that was very important to me that she gets a byline and the husband didn't. And then this is her grandson who continued to do a lot of great work and created the Frances Perkins Center, which does a lot of great work to this day. And yeah, crazy, right? This is a random piece of lore that I wanted to end on just so you could see her personality. So she had to be very capable and fearless, and apparently she had a cool personality and she was very aloof. So during a United Auto Workers strike, she phoned the Alfred Sloan, who was the chairman of the board at GM. So the auto workers are on strike. She calls the chairman of GM in the middle of the night, and she gave him a scoundrel and a skunk for not meeting the union's demands. And she said, "You don't deserve to be counted among decent men. You'll go to hell when you die." Okay. You'll go to hell when you die. As the Secretary of Labor in a midnight phone call is absolutely incredible. And her achievements in her life indicate a great love of workers and immigrants in the lower class, not so much of African Americans, but her conservative upbringing held her back from mingling freely and exhibiting personal affection. Apparently, she was very aloof and to herself. She was well suited for high-level efforts of sweeping reforms, but she never caught the public's eye or its affection. She was never particularly famous. She was never particularly well known, but she did get a lot of shit done. These were my sources that I used. I did not use AI. If any of these websites used AI, I'm sorry. But yeah, these are my sources. I use a lot of Wikipedia and then, New York Times, Ancestor Search, all that kind of good shit. So next week, we'll be talking about Barbara Hutton, who is known as the Poor Little Rich Girl. She was a very, 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 very famous model, actress, Gorgina girl who had a very horrible personal life, which is why she's known as America's Poor Little Rich Girl, because her life sucked, but she was super rich. So that'll probably be triggering and depressing, but let's go ahead and play our little game. We ran a little long tonight. That's what she said. Which one do we want to do? We'll do space. Why not? We never do space. Imagine being in trouble with her as a kid. No, I know. That seems horrible. She did only have one kid, and God, you're going to hell when you die. It's crazy. If you don't want to play this little game, you don't have to. You can just see it on my screen, but we always do a little trivia game about what we learned about. Very easy questions, not meant to trick you. I put the link in the chat. You can join on your phone. You can join on a computer. You can join in a new tab. It's honestly like whatever you want. I don't need your data. You don't have to make an account. Nothing of the sort. I hope that you all enjoyed this stream. This is one of my favorite ones, to be honest. This is a good one. Dun, 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 dun. Mariska Hargitay's documentary about her mom is low-key devastating if anyone wants to cry. That came up on my suggested. I'm looking forward to watching it. Sorry, I'm watching a reel that someone posted of me. Getting back to history was fun. We are going to be on kind of a history vibe for a while. Let me read you the schedule while everyone's joining and all of that. My throat hurts. I'm almost out of water too. Did you teach your students this one? No. I might. This was like, I learned about her today making this. I would include this as like a bell ringer or something small. We wouldn't have the time to learn everything about this. So next week we have Poor Little Rich Girl. Then we're going to do YouTuber apology influencer videos. And then we're going to do more history stuff, the bonus expeditionary force. Shout out to Nearpod user Cowboy Girl. Ugh, I'm so stuffy. Okay, I think I'm going to start the game soon. I don't know why I'm feeling very impatient tonight. Probably because we've already been here for 2 hours. Oh man, there's already 23 people there. You guys, I'm making something in the Ninja Creamy later that I'm really excited about. People are talking about supplies. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hit start. Let's freaking do this thing. I didn't use AI on the game either. I made it. Oh, I'm making, so like the Ninja Creamy, you have to put it in there and freeze it for 24 hours and then you make it. So what I put in there yesterday that I'm going to eat tonight, I cut up a bunch of strawberries, filled it up to the top with just fresh strawberries, and then poured lemonade like over it. And it's going to be so good. I'll post a picture of it. Okay, I'm hitting start on Nearpod. Everybody focus. I remember this because you said to remember this. I got the Ninja Creamy like a week or 2 ago on Facebook Marketplace. I think the questions are good this time. Some of my wrong answers were funny. I was really in it today. Are you done with tour, or are you going to go back for more shows? So I don't have anything else like concrete planned, but I am going to do more shows with them. But I kind of told them, I was like, let's do these first couple, and then like school starts for me in a couple weeks, and then we'll kind of figure out where we want to go from there. So like, yes and no. All of these answers for this question would make great band names. I have to go to the bathroom. Let's wrap this up. Ugh, I hate having to sign legal documents. Leave me alone. This one has more than one right answer. You can guess which one's not the right answer. I feel like I'm supposed to do something tomorrow, but I don't know what it is. Whatever, I guess. What was known as the happiest time in her life? This is a hard one. There's another person stopped, just chilling. I'm neighborhood watch for real. A lot of y'all put her work for FDR. I think that was probably stressful. I think it was probably rewarding, but stressful. Alrighty, Caitlin in first place, the Magic Box parking lot. 13, Amanda, FDR parking lot. Cowboy Girl, MGTK, Hannah Pearson, Yacht, Susie, Sarah, Sheesh. My Life on the E-List. Asterix, A Parking Lot, Tori, Adam Smith, Allison, She Camp, 1-800-Megan, Shirtwaist, Fire, Lizard Beth, Lola, Pepperjack, A History, Dumpster Fire, Francis Perkins, You Beautiful Tropical Fish, an NB Parking Lot, Miss Hill, ES, Heidi, Meg, Cutshall, and Caught the End at the End. That was fun. Ooh, fourth place personal best. Memes, any other info, anything you want to share? I will stick around for like 2 minutes, but I want my snack and I have to pee, so it's going to be a second. So be quick with your memes is what I'm trying to say. Take the triangle Shirtwaist Factory lightly or draw 25. No, that really was personal to her. Francis Perkins versus President Hoover. Oh, My Life on the E-List. These are good memes. Good memes. My head itches. Ugh. Kerchoo. You are welcome. I hope you laughed. I hope you learned. And I hope that you like that we're nuanced over here and we talk about everybody. What you did that was good, what you did that was bad. That racism you thought no one was going to talk about because it was on page 4 of Google. Found it. Talked about it. I knew Frances kept her maiden name, but I read the question wrong. I'm sorry. Alrighty. Good night, people. Love you so much. I will see you next week for Poor Little Rich Girl. I think this was a top 10 stream too. I really liked this one. She's very inspirational and also probably could have done better. Like, aren't we all? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. I love you so much. I will see you next week for Poor Little Rich Girl. And yeah, see you next